Hello, moving on with our reading of Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind today, and I'm looking at a chapter called Transiency on page 102. I hear a train going by where I live here in Dublin, and the train comes and it goes. It passes in time. The train was outside my house a moment ago, and now it is gone. Transiency is the truth of all things. It's one of the marks of existence that the Buddha has taught us. Transiency is not hidden. It is a truth that is right before our eyes, that is in our flesh and in our bones and in our marrow. We light a stick of incense to sit zazen every morning. We place it before the altar, and then by the time we're finished sitting, the incense is burnt out. It is transient. It is passing from being into non-being. All things are like this. Our human body, our thoughts, our suffering, our joys. All things are transient. And this is the teaching that Shinryu Suzuki draws our attention to today. Here, this book, this Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, that I bought when I was 16 years old, back in 1986, as a teenager, reading it for the first time, and now I'm 51 years old, and all those years that have passed in between, I return again to this book, to these teachings. Where is the 16-year-old who bought that book? The basic teaching of Buddhism is the teaching of transiency, or change. That everything changes is the basic truth for each existence. No one can deny this truth, and all the teaching of Buddhism is condensed within it. This is the teaching for all of us. Wherever we go, this teaching is true. This teaching is also understood as the teaching of selflessness. Because each existence is in constant change, there is no abiding self. In fact, the self-nature of each existence is nothing but change itself. The self-nature of all existence. There's no special, separate self-nature for each existence. This is also called the teaching of nirvana. When we realize the everlasting truth of everything changes and find our composure in it, we find ourselves in nirvana. That everything changes is because there is no fixed abiding self for any dharma or any existence. And that means that reality is a constant flow of change. And that also means that there is no separate existence for any dharma within reality, for any phenomenon within reality. Because that is the case, reality is the single body of itself. It is the Dharma, the body of Buddha. Another way to kind of articulate this, encapsulates everything. The Dharmakaya encapsulates everything that ever was, ever will be, ever is not, everything conceivable and inconceivable. So this is the body of Buddha. This is the true body of Buddha. This is the true body of reality. And we participate in this. We participate in this from our point of view in time and space. So Myozan, myself, here. With no fixed self, because everything is constantly changing. And because there is no fixed self, because we are part of this ever-changing Dharma, this ever-changing Buddha, this ever-changing body of Buddha, this ever-changing reality, we are not born in truth, and we do not in truth die. Of course, from the limited point of view of our own perspective, our own subjective view, of course we are, we are born and we die, but the deeper truth is that we do not. And this is the truth of nirvana, that transiency is teaching us. Now, transiency is not an easy teaching, it's very painful. It's very painful if we cannot accept it. So our own mortality, the death and passing away of the things and people we love. So Shunryu Suzuki talks about accepting it, accepting this truth here. Without accepting the fact that everything changes, we cannot find perfect composure. But unfortunately, although it is true, it is difficult for us to accept. Because we cannot accept the truth of transiency, we suffer. So we suffer because we resist transiency. Now, this is a very human thing, of course, to resist transiency. But whether we resist it or don't like it doesn't change the fact that it is true, that it is the deep truth of things. So far better to make peace with this and to find an acceptance of this truth. And this acceptance will release us from the suffering associated with it. It won't make it go away. It doesn't make transiency go away. It doesn't make our coming and going into existence and out of existence. It doesn't make that go away, because that is an eternal truth. What it does is show us the deeper truth that there is no coming and there is no going. That our limited view of clinging on to the illusion of permanence and of fixed reality and of fixed phenomena, this is a delusion, and once we see through that, we can put our suffering at rest and find composure. This is the teaching of Shunryu Suzuki today. Now, of course, when people die, we still cry, because we don't want them to die, but we still cannot change the fact that people pass, ourselves included. Unfortunately, although it is true, it is difficult for us to accept it, because we cannot accept the truth of transiency, we suffer. So the cause of suffering is our non-acceptance of this truth. The teaching of the cause of suffering, the teaching that everything changes, are thus two sides of the one coin. Shunryu Suzuki then moves on to say, we should find perfect existence through imperfect existence. We should find perfection in imperfection. For us, complete perfection is not different from imperfection. In Buddhism, it is a heretical view to expect something outside this world. We do not seek for something besides ourselves. We should find truth in this world, through our difficulties, through our suffering. Very much a Mahayana vision of the Dharma. So, unlike many religious points of view, which posits a future perfection, a future heaven, and where this material world is a kind of fallen place, a place without grace or blessing, Buddhism sees that, or the Dharma sees that this material realm and the immaterial ideal are in fact the same thing, two sides of the one coin. So we have a radically non-dualistic view of this. So the Dharma approach is very different from, for example, the Abrahamic faith traditions, which posit a future heaven. Certainly in the Mahayana and in Zen, we're concerned with the here and now, which is inseparable from what is often called the eternal. So we see the perfection of imperfection, in this reality, and we see that the eternal is present in the temporal, and the temporal makes the eternal possible. So it breaks open this dichotomy and sees a non-dualistic, truthful view of reality. So really what I think Shunryu Suzuki is suggesting here is that we have to make peace with where we are and when we are, this time and place, because this is where the truth is located and to be discovered. This is the only place that there is, here and now. And this transient moment involves the imperfection of our human lives. And if we can make peace with that and accept the truth of that, then we are liberated in truth. So until we become strong enough to accept difficulty as pleasure, we have to continue this effort. So what he's suggesting is that the difficulties of our life, we have to try and find some joy and pleasure even within those. So, even though I am aging, I am still alive. This is a great pleasure. I'm no longer the 16-year-old that bought this book. I'm now 51. And the old body is getting creaky. The old mind isn't as sharp as it used to be. But I'm here and alive. I can find pleasure even in this suffering. Actually, if you become honest enough or straightforward enough, it is not so difficult to accept this truth. You can change your way of thinking a little bit. It is difficult, but this difficulty will not always be the same. Sometimes it will be difficult, and sometimes it will not be so difficult. So when we are suffering, deeply suffering, it's a lot easier to accept the truth that everything changes. However, when we're joyful and happy and content, the fact that that is transient too is more difficult to accept. So there are times where we find it much more easy to accept the truth of these teachings, and other times we find it very difficult to accept the truth of these teachings. No matter whether we find it difficult or not, the truth of the teachings remain. So, transiency, a deep truth in the Dharma. Next time we'll move on to the quality of being on page 104 as we continue our sitting with Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, as we draw to the end in the months ahead of this series of reflections. So thank you very much for your attention, and thank you for your practice. Enjoy your life.